Hey, good morning, guys. So today we're doing between you and me, preposition and pronouns. So as with every lesson, we want to make it as raw as possible. So there'll be no editing of the videos. It's just me sitting, learning French, and sharing my experience with you guys. And hopefully something triggers you to do your French lesson today. So with that being said, let's jump into today's lesson. And again, it's between you and me, preposition and pronouns in French. Okay, bonjour. Today we're going to cover some essential prepositions that have to do with location. That is words like behind and under. We're also going to look at the type of pronouns you'll need to use after words like these. Let's begin. What is a preposition? First off, let's make sure we know what we're talking about. Simply put, a preposition is generally a small word that indicates one of the following things. Direction, for example, she is coming from town. Time, we'll meet before you leave. Location, your wallet is under the chair. And possession, the people of France are wonderful. You know a number of French prepositions already, whether you realize this or not. We've talked about two specifically. A, which is a, which means to or at, and de, which is de, which means of or from. So for the first example, the first preposition that we're going to use is a. On va à Bruxelles.
On va à Bruxelles.
Let's get that again. On va à Bruxelles.
On va à Bruxelles.
On va à Bruxelles. And on va à Bruxelles means we are going to Brussels. On va à Bruxelles. Okay. So on va à Bruxelles means we are going to Brussels. The next preposition that we're going to use. Ma mère est au travail, which is my mother is at work. Ma mère est au travail.
Ma mère est au travail.
And again, ma mère est au travail means my mother is at work. The next one we have c'est la cousin de Claudette. C'est la cousin de Claudette.
C'est la cousine de Claudette.
C'est la cousine de Claudette. C'est la cousine de Claudette. And c'est la cousine de Claudette means this is Claudette's cousin or this is the cousin of Claudette. The last one, we have il sort de la chambre. Il sort de la chambre means he is going out of the room. Il sort de la chambre. And the preposition in this sentence is de, which is de. Let's hear the pronunciation.
Il sort de la chambre.
Il sort de la chambre, which means he's going out of the room. Again, the preposition here is de, and in English is translated to of or from. So just to run through, we have de, au, a, and these are the prepositions which were used in the example sentences that we just went through. Let's go from the top. We have on va à Bruxelles.
On va à Bruxelles.
On va à Bruxelles, which means we are going to Brussels. Then we have ma mère est au travail. Ma mère est au travail.
Ma mère est au travail.
Then we have c'est la cousine de Claudette. C'est la cousine de Claudette, sorry.
C'est la cousine de Claudette.
C'est la cousine de Claudette, which is this is Claudette's cousin or this is the cousin of Claudette. Then we have il sort de la chambre, which means he is going out of the room.
Il sort de la chambre.
Okay, great. Let's move on. Now, so that you can better describe where things are, let's look at some essential location prepositions in French. Where it is. Prepositions of locations are extremely important when you need to answer a question with où, which is OU, where. Such as où est le musée, which means where is the museum. Où est le musée?
Où est le musée?
Où est le musée? Let's stress a bit on that où, a bit more. Où est le musée?
Où est le musée?
Then we have où sont mes clés? Où sont mes clés?
Où sont mes clés?
And où sont mes clés? Où sont mes clés means where are my keys? Then we have où est la poste? Où est la poste? And où est la poste means where is the post office?
Où est la poste?
Où est la poste means where is the post office? Below are some common prepositions that you can use in answering these sorts of questions. Complete with example sentences for practice. So the questions that we just went through were où est le musée, which is where is the museum, où sont mes clés, which is where are my keys, and où est la poste, which is where is the post office. So here are some of the prepositions that we're going to go through to be able to answer those questions. So for the first one, we have sur, which means on. Sur.
Sur.
Sur. Again, sur means on in English. Then we have tes clés sont sur le bureau.
Tes clés sont sur le bureau.
Tes clés sont sur le bureau. And tes clés sont sur le bureau means your keys are on the desk. We have l'hôtel est sur la colline.
L'hôtel est sur la colline.
And l'hôtel est sur la colline means the hotel is on the hill. L'hôtel est sur la colline, which again means the hotel is on the hill. The next preposition we have is sous.
Sous.
So, sous. Okay, let me do that over because it was registered as chou. Sous. Okay, so sous in English means under. So, our next sentence, la télécommande est sous le canapé. La télécommande est sous le canapé. La télécommande est sous le canapé. And la télécommande est sous le canapé means the remote control is under the couch. We have le pays est sous le contrôle. Le pays est sous le contrôle.
Le pays est sous leur contrôle.
Le pays est sous le contrôle. Let me do that one more time. Le pays est sous leur contrôle. That wasn't good. I'll do it one more time. And le pays est sous leur contrôle means the country is under their control.
Le pays est sous leur contrôle.
Leur. Okay. Le pays est sous leur contrôle. I think it's crucial to get that leur pronunciation for there. So le pays est sous leur contrôle. One more time.
Le pays est sous leur contrôle.
Le pays est sous leur contrôle. And again, le pays est sous leur contrôle means the country is under their control. The next preposition we have is dans.
Dans.
And dans means in English. Dans. Le musée n'est pas dans le quartier latin. Le musée n'est pas dans le quartier latin.
Le musée n'est pas dans le quartier latin.
Le musée n'est pas dans le quartier latin. And le musée n'est pas dans le quartier latin means the museum isn't in the Latin Quarter. And just to give more context, the Latin Quarter is arrondissement in Paris. Okay? Il y a du sucre dans le café. It's our next sentence. Il y a du sucre dans le café.
Il y a du sucre dans le café.
Il y a du sucre dans le café. And this means there is sugar in the coffee. Our next preposition is devant.
Devant.
And devant means before or in front of. Devant. Our next phrase, j'attends devant le magasin. J'attends devant le magasin.
J'attends devant le magasin.
Le magasin. J'attends devant le magasin. And j'attends devant le magasin means I am waiting in front of the store. J'attends devant le magasin. Then we have ses chaussures sont devant la porte. Ses chaussures sont devant la porte, which means her shoes are in front of the door.
Ses chaussures sont devant la porte.
Ses chaussures sont devant la porte. Again, ses chaussures sont devant la porte means her shoes are in front of the door. Our next preposition, we have en face de. So en face de means opposite or across from. En face de.
En face de.
And again, en face de means opposite or across from. Our next sentence, on va garer la voiture en face de l'hôtel. On va garer la voiture en face de l'hôtel.
On va garer la voiture en face de l'hôtel.
On va garer la voiture en face de l'hôtel. And this means we are going to park the car across from the hotel. On va garer la voiture en face de l'hôtel. Our next sentence. La poste est en face du supermarché. No. Yeah. La poste est en face du supermarché.
La poste est en face du supermarché.
La poste est en face du supermarché. And this means that the post office is opposite the supermarket. La poste est en face du supermarché. Our next preposition is derrière.
Derrière.
Derrière. And derrière means behind in English. Our next sentence is qui est derrière le masque?
Qui est derrière le masque?
Qui est derrière le masque? And qui est derrière le masque means who is behind the mask. Then we have notre maison est derrière l'église.
Notre maison est derrière l'église.
Notre maison est derrière l'église. And this means our house is behind the church. Notre maison est derrière l'église. Our next preposition is à côté de.
À côté de.
À côté de. And à côté de means next to. La pharmacie est à côté de mon appartement. La pharmacie est à côté de mon appartement.
La pharmacie est à côté de mon appartement.
La pharmacie est à côté de mon appartement. And this means that the pharmacy is next to my apartment. La pharmacie est à côté de mon appartement. Then we have la lettre est à côté de la cafetière. La lettre est à côté de la cafetière.
La lettre est à côté de la cafetière.
La lettre est à côté de la cafetière. And this means that the letter is next to the coffee maker. La cafetière is coffee maker. La lettre is the letter, obviously. And est à côté is next to. So la lettre est à côté de la cafetière.
La lettre est à côté de la cafetière.
Cafetière. Our next preposition is à droite de. And à droite de means to the right of.
À droite de.
À droite de. À droite de. I stressed on that de a bit. À droite de. It's better. Nous sommes sur la banque. Nous sommes sur la banque blanc à droite de la fontaine. Nous sommes sur la banque blanc à droite de la fontaine. Okay, this might be a bit tricky. Let me try. Nous sommes sur la banque blanc à droite de la fontaine. I didn't get it. I need to do it over. Nous sommes sur la banque blanc à droite de la fontaine. Okay, let's listen to the pronunciation.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine.
Encore, again.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine.
So there are two words here which are very close in pronunciation. Le banc blanc.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine. Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine. The reason I'm doing it over, it's because it's not registering clearly on the app. I'll try one more time just to make sure that the pronunciation is clear. So, nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine means that we are on the white bench to the right of the fountain. But bench in French is le banc and white is blanc, and the two words are close together in the sentence. So I'm just having some issues pronouncing it effectively.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine. I'll try one more time. Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine. It registered, but it didn't register the way I wanted to. But le banc blanc.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine.
Nous sommes sur le banc blanc à droite de la fontaine. Next sentence. Les toilettes sont à droite des escaliers. Les toilettes sont à droite des escaliers.
Les toilettes sont à droite des escaliers.
And this means in English, the restroom is to the right of the stairs. Les toilettes sont à droite des escaliers. Our next preposition is à gauche de. And à gauche de means to the left of in English.
À gauche de.
À gauche de. And I think it's important not to stress on that de too much, because in the application, if I stress on it too much, it's registering as two in French, because in French, un, deux, that's one, two. So try not to stress too much on the de, because you might say à gauche de, which sounds like left two. I mean, a French native speaker would understand what you're saying, obviously depending on the context, but just a word of advice, not only for you, but for myself. À gauche de. Our next sentence is l'école est à gauche du marché. L'école est à gauche du marché.
L'école est à gauche du marché.
L'école est à gauche du marché. And this means that the school is to the left of the market. L'école est à gauche du marché. Next sentence is j'ai taché mon vélo à gauche de l'entrée. J'ai taché mon vélo à gauche de l'entrée.
J'attache mon vélo à gauche de l'entrée.
Okay, j'attache, not j'ai taché. J'attache mon vélo à gauche de l'entrée, which means I lock my bike up to the left of the entrance. J'attache mon vélo à gauche de l'entrée. And again, j'attache mon vélo à gauche de l'entrée means I lock my bike up to the left of the entrance. Our next preposition is entrer. Entrer.
Entre.
Oh no. Entre. Our next preposition is entre, not entrer. Entre.
Entre.
Entre. And entre means between. Entre. Right. L'assiette est entre le couteau et la fourchette. L'assiette est entre le couteau et la fourchette.
L'assiette est entre le couteau et la fourchette.
Okay. L'assiette est entre le couteau et la fourchette. And this means that the plate is between the knife and the fork. L'assiette est entre le couteau et la fourchette. Et la fourchette.
L'assiette est entre le couteau et la fourchette.
Et la fourchette, not fourchette, fourchette. I'll try that one more time. L'assiette est entre le couteau et la fourchette. Okay, good pronunciation. And our last sentence is il y a une librairie entre le musée et la piscine. Il y a une librairie entre le musée et la piscine. Il y a une librairie entre le musée et la piscine. And this means that there is a bookstore between the museum and the pool.
Il y a une librairie entre le musée et la piscine.
Il y a une librairie entre le musée et la piscine. So, memorizing these words would really increase the amount of things that you're able to describe in French. So, just for the purpose of the lesson and for my memory, let's just run back through not the sentences per se, but the prepositions all the way from the top. So again, the first preposition that we learned was sur, and sur means on.
Sur.
Sur. The next preposition that we learned was sous.
Sous.
Sous, and sous means under. The third preposition was dans.
Dans.
And dans means in English. Then we have devant.
Devant.
And devant means before or in front of in English. Our next preposition was en face de.
En face de.
And en face de means opposite or across from. Preposition number 5 was derrière.
Derrière.
And derrière means behind in English. Sixth preposition was à côté de.
À côté de.
À côté de means next to in English. Seventh is à droite de.
À droite de.
À droite de means to the right of in English. We have à gauche de.
À gauche de.
And à gauche de means to the left of. And we have entre.
Entre.
And entre means between. So it's à droite de, it's à gauche de, it's entre, it's sous, it's dans, it's en face de, it's à côté de, and I know I'm missing one, and I will have to go back to look. I said à gauche, à droite, à côté de, derrière. We have devant also. Okay, c'est ça, that's it. So just to run through again, we have sur, on, derrière, behind, devant, before, en face de, opposite or across from, à gauche de, to the left of, à droite de, to the right of, sous, under, and there's two more, but you guys get the point. Try your best to memorize these prepositions because it would give you the ability to be able to create more sentences in French, and it would also give you the ability to be able to answer questions when somebody's asking, okay, where is the museum, or where's the remote control, or where is the cup, or where is the coffee, you know? So it will definitely help with that because this is going to definitely help me as well. But before we move on, there's just one thing we need to look at a little more closely. How you say in French. Obviously in French, guys, there are tons of rules. There are tons of exceptions. Not just in French, but in any language learning experience. However, I did learn a bit of Spanish before. But I feel like in French, there's so many rules as compared to Spanish. However, we are here, so let's go. So, when in is in dans. So, as we covered before, dans, D-A-N-S, in French is in English, okay? But there's an exception when dans is not supposed to be used as in French. Most of the time, if you would use the preposition in English, you'll learn dans in French. Just like we learned above. However, there are some major exceptions to this rule. So let's take a moment to look at a few of the ones that come up a lot in conversations. These include with countries, with cities, with languages. So the exceptions, the exceptions for dans in French is with countries, with cities, and with languages. So let me expound further. When you talk about being in a country, you'll actually use the same words that you learned when we were talking about going to a country. So those words that we learned when we talked about going to a country are on, o, or o. On as in en, o as in au, or O as in AUX, depending on the gender and the number of countries. So the first example, on va au Japon, which means we are going to Japan. On va au Japon.
On va au Japon.
Okay. Then we have on est au Japon.
On est au Japon.
On est au Japon. And on est au Japon means we are in Japan. Nous allons en Allemagne. Nous allons en Allemagne. And this means we are going to Germany. Then we have nous sommes en Allemagne. Nous sommes en Allemagne. And sorry, I didn't do the pronunciation before. So, nous allons en Allemagne. This is what it sounds like.
Nous allons en Allemagne.
Nous allons en Allemagne. Nous allons en Allemagne.
Nous allons en Allemagne.
Nous allons en Allemagne. Okay, there's a little bit of Allemagne. But I think I'm stressing on the end of Allemagne too much. Allemagne. So, nous allons en Allemagne is we are going to Germany. And nous sommes en Allemagne. Allemagne is we are in Germany.
Nous sommes en Allemagne.
Nous sommes en Allemagne means we are in Germany. Then we have ils vont aux Philippines. Ils vont aux Philippines. Ils vont aux Philippines. And that O in Philippines is not AU, but it's AUX.
Ils vont aux Philippines.
Ils vont aux Philippines. Then we have ils sont aux Philippines.
Ils sont aux Philippines.
Ils sont aux Philippines. And ils sont aux Philippines means they are in the Philippines, okay? So at no point with countries did we use the preposition don. We use O, AU, we use on, EN, and we use O, AUX. And Philippines, because I believe Philippines is a cluster of islands, we use the plural version of O, which is AUX. And when we were talking about being in Germany, we were saying nous allons en Allemagne. So in would be EN in this instance with countries. And when we were talking about we are in Japan, because Japan is masculine, we use AU. Okay? On va au Japon. On est au Japon. Nous allons en Allemagne. Nous sommes en Allemagne. Ils vont aux Philippines. Ils sont aux Philippines. So, if you having challenges remembering the rules for when you use on, o, there's a ton of tools online that you can use to be able to really nail down your understanding of when to use it and when not to use it. So let's go on to talk about cities. Another word of advice, I believe I covered when to use o in the lesson on alley. So maybe you can watch that video and maybe that might help, because I feel like I did talk about it there, but I can't remember specifically at this moment. Okay, so we're going on to talk about cities. You won't use dans to say that you're in a city either. In fact, cities work a lot like countries. You use the preposition a both to talk about going to a city and to talk about being in a city. So for example, elles vont à Rouen. Elles vont à Rouen. Elles vont à Rouen. And this means they are going to Rouen.
Elles vont à Rouen.
Elles vont à Rouen. Then we have elles sont à Rouen. Elles sont à Rouen. And elles sont à Rouen means they are going to Rouen.
Elles sont à Rouen.
No, sorry, elles sont à Rouen means that they are in Rouen, not that they are going. Elles vont à Rouen means they are going to, and elles sont à Rouen means they are in Rouen. So how do we use it with languages? Another common situation we don't use don for is when we're talking about languages. In that situation, we always use on. So, le livre est en français.
Le livre est en français.
Le livre est en français. And this means the book is in French. Le site web est en anglais.
Le site web est en anglais.
And this means that the website is in English. Le site web est en anglais. And then we have le message est en japonais. No, le message est en japonais. Yeah.
Le message est en japonais.
Japonais, because there is no E. Le message est en japonais, and this means the message is in Japanese. Le message est en japonais. Et voilà. So, let's continue. Prepositions and la liaison. Now that you've learned about some essential French prepositions, we're going to talk a little bit about how to pronounce them in a sentence. As a general rule, you must perform la liaison between a preposition that ends in a silent letter and any vowel initial word that follows it. If the preposition is only one syllable long, if the preposition is longer than one syllable, then la liaison is usually optional. So as a result, you'll need to remember to do la liaison with preposition like sous, which means under in English, and dans, which means in English, but not with prepositions like devant, which is before or in front of in English, because devant has two syllables as compared to sous and dans, because they have one syllable, okay? So for example, le cadeau est dans une grande boîte bleue.
Le cadeau est dans une grande boîte bleue.
Le cadeau est dans une grande boîte bleue. Le cadeau est dans une grande boîte bleue. Le cadeau est dans une grande boîte bleue. And this means that the gift is in a big blue box. Then we have le banc est sous un arbre. Le banc est sous un arbre. No, le banc est sous un arbre.
Le banc est sous un arbre.
Okay. Le banc est sous un arbre. Let's do that again.
Le banc est sous un arbre.
Le banc. Try that one more time. Le banc est sous un arbre. And this means the bench is under the tree. Le banc est sous un arbre. So the point of these last two examples is them using la liaison with the prepositions, because the word after it is followed by a vowel. So which means that the last letter in that preposition, because it has one syllable, you do la liaison. So for example, dans is D-A-N-S. Usually the last letter is not pronounced. However, based on the rule that we just discussed, because it's one syllable and the word that follows after dans starts with a vowel, you do la liaison. So dans une grande boîte. So you say le cadeau est dans une grande boîte bleue. You pronounce the S in this instance. The next example, le banc est sous un arbre. Because on starts with a vowel as well, you pronounce the S at the end of sous, which is usually silent. So to spot the difference between the two, we're going to say a sentence which has two syllables and see if they use la liaison.
L'affiche est devant une fenêtre.
Okay. So in this instance, there is the T at the end of devant does not become pronounced, even though the word after devant starts with a vowel. So l'affiche est devant l'affiche est devant une fenêtre, which means the poster is in front of the window. Well, the poster is in front of a window. L'affiche est devant une fenêtre.
L'affiche est devant une fenêtre.
Let's try my pronunciation one more time. L'affiche est devant une fenêtre. Liaison rules like this one can seem a little needless when you're first learning about them, but don't worry, over time you'll find yourself following them without even thinking about it, just like you follow any other pronunciation rule. So again, and I think I mentioned it yesterday, which I need to do as well, is start looking at series, French series, so that you can be able to get the flow for the language. I usually listen to a podcast called Inner French, and I also subscribe to a channel called Slow French, I think, on YouTube, and it really allows you to learn the flow for the language. I mean, I have the benefit of being in France, and for that reason, I have the benefit of engaging with French speakers every day. So I listen a lot, but if you don't have that benefit of being in France or in a French-speaking country, I will definitely propose listening to podcasts in French, watching other French-related material online, or like me, changing your phone into French so that you can familiarize yourself with how the language looks. Just try to get as much French in as possible, you know. It's annoying at first because your brain has to do a lot of work to be able to shift your mind towards French. But if you really want to be fluent and you want to speak, it's something that you definitely need to do. So let's continue. Pronouns or prepositions. And now we come to the final topic in this lesson, the type of pronoun that you use after a preposition. Way back at the start of the course, you learned the basic subject pronouns, which I think I did a video on, okay? Je, tu, il, elle, etc. So je, tu, il, elle, on, nous, vous, il, elle, voilà. So these are the pronouns that you'll usually use when you're talking about the subject of the sentence. That is, the person or the thing doing the action. If you want to put a preposition in front of a pronoun and say something like in front of him or next to him, you'll need to use what is called stressed or emphatic pronouns. So the French emphatic pronouns are set out in the tables below. Okay, so let's go through these singular pronouns. So again, these are emphatic pronouns. And emphatic pronouns are used when you want to say something like in front of him or next to him, okay? So the first singular pronoun we have is moi, and in English this means me.
Moi.
Okay. Then we have toi, and in English this means you.
Toi.
Then we have elle, and in English it means her/it, and the reason it is there is because everything in French has a gender, okay? Then we have lui,
Lui.
which means him/it. And then we have soi,
Soi.
and soi means oneself. These emphatic pronouns are pretty different from their subject pronoun counterparts, with the exception of elle, her, it, which is actually the exact same. However, you've probably already heard the French word for moi, me, and maybe also toi, you, before, which should help you memorize them. So let's go from the top. Moi, me, toi, you, elle, her/it, lui, him/it, soi, oneself. It is also worth pointing out that if we're using on, one, to mean we in casual conversation, you won't use soi, oneself, as the corresponding emphatic form. Instead, you will use the emphatic form of nous. Let's repeat that. It is worth pointing out that if you're using on, so on, which means one, to mean we, because you can say on to mean we in casual conversation in French, you won't use the emphatic pronoun of soi, which means oneself, as the corresponding form. Okay? You will use nous as the emphatic form, and nous means we. Okay, so let's discuss the plural pronouns and their pronunciation. So for the plural pronouns, we have nous. So in English, nous. For the emphatic pronoun nous, it translates to us.
Nous,
Nous, which means us. Then we have vous,
vous,
which means you, which is formal and or plural. Then we have eux,
eux,
not u, eux. And eux means them,
eux,
eux. Then we have elles, and this means them, feminine.
elle,
Elles, them, feminine. This time, most of the emphatic pronouns are the exact same as the ordinary subject pronouns, which means that the emphatic form of nous, which is we, is nous, which is us. The only different one is eux, which is them, and which takes the place of il. So what they're saying is that the regular plural pronouns would be nous, vous, il, elle. However, they're saying that the only different one is eux, which is them masculine. So if you want to use an emphatic pronoun in a plural sense, you're using the same regular subject, the same regular plural pronouns that you would use if you're not trying to emphasize something. So nous remains the same, vous remains the same, elle remains the same. The only difference is eux.
eux,
Only difference. So we're going to go through some example sentences so that we can get used to these pronouns after prepositions. And most of the prepositions that we've used here are the same ones that you've learned above. This is some great extra practice, right? So I'm going to run through these sentences. L'entrée est derrière vous, which means the entrance is behind you. L'entrée est derrière vous. Let's listen to the pronunciation.
l'entrée est derrière vous.
Okay. Next sentence is il y a un insecte sur toi. Il y a un insecte sur toi.
Il y a un insecte sur toi.
Il y a un insecte sur toi, which means there is a bug on you. Il y a un insecte sur toi. Wasn't a good pronunciation. Try that again. Il y a un insecte sur toi. We have la confiance en soi est important. La confiance en soi est important.
La confiance en soi est importante.
Let's listen.
La confiance en soi est importante.
La confiance en soi est important. Then we have c'est un secret entre nous.
C'est un secret entre nous. C'est un secret entre nous.
C'est un secret entre nous means this is a secret between us. Then we have tu es à côté de lui. Tu es à côté de lui.
Tu es à côté de lui.
Tu es à côté de lui, and this means you are next to him. Then we have voici l'entrée, mais il y a une barrière devant elle.
Voici l'entrée, mais il y a une barrière devant elle.
I don't know why it's breaking up.
Voici l'entrée, mais il y a une barrière devant elle.
Voici l'entrée, mais il y a une barrière devant elle, and this means here is the entrance, but there's a barrier in front of it. Then we have il y a une place libre en face de moi.
Il y a une place libre en face de moi.
Il y a une place libre en face de moi, and this means there's an empty seat across from me. Then we have
Nous sortons avec elle.
Nous sortons avec elle, which means we are going out with them.
On va regarder le film sans eux.
On va regarder le film sans eux. And this means we are going to watch the movie without them. The final two sentences above are good examples of how prepositions that aren't related to location, such as avec, with, and sans, without, are still followed by emphatic pronouns. Now we should point out that you won't use these emphatic pronouns after prepositions in French. They get used at other times too, like when a pronoun is essentially by itself. So moi aussi,
Moi aussi.
moi aussi, which means me too. Or when you want to emphasize who is doing something,
Moi, j'aime cette musique.
moi, j'aime cette musique, which means as for me, I like this music. So let's run through the action replay. A preposition is a word that links a noun or pronoun to other words. Among other things, they show location and direction. The word for in French is normally dans, except for when you're talking about particular things such as countries, cities, languages. If a preposition comes before a noun, you'll need to use an emphatic pronoun instead of a normal subject pronoun. So let's go on to cover our culture component and bring this lesson to a close. So onion soup and beef bourguignon. Food is a major part of French culture, and two classic examples of French dishes are la soupe à la oignon, which is the onion soup, and le bœuf bourguignon, the beef bourguignon. These two fairly simple foods may have become all-time favorites in both restaurants and home kitchens all over the world, but they maintain very firm ties to France and are still popular here today. Onion soup in general has been around for thousands of years, and it began as a simple dish that was easy and cheap to make. The French version that we know and love today, though, was invented around the 17th or 18th century. It is commonly made by caramelized onions, adding them to a beef broth, and then topping everything off with croutons or a small slice of bread that is then covered in cheese. The French enjoy this warm, hearty dish at either lunchtime or dinner time, and may eat it either as the main course or just as a starter. Beef bourguignon, on the other hand, is a little younger. Although the concept of beef stew is centuries old, beef bourguignon specifically only came on the scene in the 19th century. The bourguignon part of it, its name means Burgundia, indicating that it comes from the region of La Bourgogne, Burgundy, and or that it is used Burgundian wine. It's this addition of wine that sets it apart from the ordinary beef stews, and it also usually contains carrots, onions, and seasonings. Bacon and potatoes are sometimes added to the pot too, and it all amounts to a delectable main course meal that the French are proud to call their own. Both of these dishes are worth trying out in their native habitat, and the next time you journey to France. But why not experience a little French culture at home? Try looking up a recipe for onion soup or beef bourguignon, and bring a little piece of France to your own dining table.
La soupe à l'oignon.
La soupe à l'oignon.
Le bœuf bourguignon.
Le bœuf bourguignon.
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 La Bourgogne.
La Bourgogne. And with that brings us to the end of today's lesson. And I look forward to seeing you guys for the next lesson. And let me know if these videos are helping you guys, if anybody's watching them. Just leave something in the comments. Let me know if it's making a difference and if it's helping. Have a good day, guys.